The Zal'Kor had conquered countless worlds, their name whispered in fear across the galaxies. Merciless assassins, bred for one purpose: extermination. Their technology was unmatched, their methods ruthless. When the Council of Galaxies issued a bounty on the primitive humans of Earth, the Zal'Kor saw it as yet another easy target. To them, humanity was weak, a fleeting species too distracted by their petty conflicts to pose any real threat. Their leaders, generals, and commanders saw Earth as just another job. A quick mission. A simple annihilation. The Zal'Kor's fleet had been dispatched to Earth with a single goal: wipe out humanity before they could even make an impact on the galactic stage. The general, Tharok, stood in the command center of the flagship, overseeing the operation. He was a towering figure, his skin a metallic sheen, his eyes glowing with a fierce red intensity. Tharok's mind raced with anticipation as his ships entered Earth's atmosphere. He had heard the rumors. Humans, a species with no advanced spacefaring technology, were still locked in their primitive stages of existence. The Zal'Kor had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than Earth's in mere hours. Earth's greatest defense, its military, was laughably outdated. No match for their advanced weapons. Tharok gave the signal, and within moments, an armada of ships released their deadly payloads: plasma bombs, tactical warheads, and EMP blasts, all designed to obliterate any attempt at resistance. On the ground, the humans would not even have time to mount a defense. In their cities, their capitals, the Zal'Kor's fleet unleashed hell. Their technology cracked Earth's atmosphere wide open, sending shockwaves through the human population. Massive, sweeping destruction rolled over continents, shaking Earth to its core. Buildings collapsed like fragile paper under the intensity of the weapons. General Tharok watched the destruction unfold with cold satisfaction. He had seen this before: the panic, the futile attempts at resistance, the crushing despair as entire societies crumbled under the weight of superior force. And yet, Earth's leaders still fought. Some leaders rallied their people, sending them into futile defenses, but Tharok knew it was pointless. Their weapons were toys compared to the might of the Zal'Kor. Tharok's communication officer approached, speaking in an urgent tone. "General, we've encountered no resistance from their military. They are already retreating or surrendering." "Excellent," Tharok replied, the edge of satisfaction in his voice. "Continue the bombardment. Leave no survivors." The Zal'Kor's fleet methodically eradicated any form of opposition. Military bases fell silent, cities reduced to rubble, and any remaining defense systems were overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the assault. Even the human military, despite their bravado, had no chance against an enemy that operated with such precision. General Tharok felt no remorse, no hesitation. To him, this was just another job, another species wiped off the galactic map. As the hours passed, the Zal'Kor began to sweep across the globe, systematically hunting down any remaining resistance. Their elite squads, composed of highly trained warriors, were deployed to cities, engaging in urban warfare with the humans who foolishly thought they could defend themselves. Each of these human fighters, armed with outdated firearms and makeshift weapons, stood little chance against the Zal'Kor's advanced technology and tactics. They were dispatched swiftly, their lives snuffed out in seconds. Tharok reveled in the silence of victory that seemed to stretch across the Earth. The humans had barely begun to understand the scope of their extinction. The fleet had delivered swift and brutal justice. Yet, as the Zal'Kor's efforts reached their peak, an unexpected anomaly presented itself. A single transmission from Earth's deepest forests had cut through the chaos, its contents garbled but eerily specific: "The Earth spirit has awakened." It was an odd, nonsensical phrase, one that Tharok dismissed at first as a glitch. But there was something about it that gnawed at the back of his mind. His commanders, too, began to sense it. The world's remaining pockets of resistance, once easily defeated, were starting to coalesce into something more organized, more resourceful. It was as if Earth's population was refusing to die quietly. The human defiance, no matter how small or scattered, did not seem like the normal desperation of a doomed species. Tharok's mind raced. Had they developed new technologies? No, he quickly dismissed the idea. The humans, after all, had no capacity to advance this quickly. Their defeat was assured. And yet, deep in the forests, hidden from the prying eyes of the Zal'Kor, something ancient stirred. Something that Tharok and the Zal'Kor had never prepared for. something that would soon make them question their assumptions about humanity. The Zal'Kor's relentless assault on Earth continued with terrifying efficiency. Their ships darkened the skies, casting shadows over cities and continents as they rained destruction down upon the unsuspecting human population. Massive bombardments flattened entire metropolises, leaving nothing but ash and rubble in their wake. Military forces attempted to retaliate, but their weapons were no match for the Zal'Kor's superior technology. Conventional air forces were obliterated in minutes by the overwhelming firepower of the Zal'Kor fleet. Even the most advanced human defense systems failed to breach the attackers' shields. The humans, despite their resilience and determination, were powerless against the alien invaders. The initial shock and chaos gave way to fear as humanity realized the scale of the threat they were facing. Governments crumbled under the pressure, and survivors fled to the remnants of cities, trying to avoid the ever-growing shadow of annihilation. Those who tried to fight back were met with swift, brutal retribution. The Zal'Kor's merciless tactics rendered human attempts at resistance futile. Military strongholds were decimated with pinpoint precision, and any pockets of resistance were swiftly eradicated. The world watched in horror as one nation after another fell to the alien onslaught. Yet, in the midst of this devastation, something strange began to occur. A shift. The air seemed to grow thicker with tension as the Zal'Kor's continued dominance over Earth's surface went unchallenged. But there were whispers, vague rumors among the human survivors. People spoke in hushed tones about an ancient being, a figure from folklore that was said to protect humanity in their darkest hour. The name Baba Yaga emerged from the depths of human memory, whispered on the winds as a faint but potent symbol of resistance. General Tharok, consumed with his belief in the invincibility of the Zal'Kor, brushed off the rumors. "My fleet is unstoppable," he muttered to his commanders. "These primitive humans are nothing. This will be over soon." But as the days passed, something began to unsettle him. The human resistance, though fragmented and disorganized, had shown signs of persistence. They had not surrendered as quickly as expected. Some areas of the Earth, notably rural regions, had somehow evaded total destruction. The Zal'Kor's precision strikes were faltering. There were reports of strange occurrences, inexplicable forces pushing back against their attacks. General Tharok dismissed the reports as nothing more than superstitions, but his confidence began to waver. His intelligence officers presented disturbing findings. Human survivors, some of whom had previously been unimportant, now rallied around an unknown figure, a name that had started to spread like wildfire. Baba Yaga. An ancient spirit, a mythical force that humans believed had power beyond comprehension. The thought was laughable, yet it lingered, and the Zal'Kor leaders began to fear that their domination might not be as absolute as they had believed. As the Zal'Kor continued their hunt, it became apparent that the myth of Baba Yaga was not a simple fairy tale. Reports came in from Earth's vast forests, where strange occurrences seemed to defy logic. Survivors spoke of a force, a being that appeared to command the very elements themselves. Some claimed they had seen the land bend and twist around them, as though nature itself was responding to a call. Others reported that some of the Zal'Kor's most elite strike teams had mysteriously disappeared, their bodies never recovered, leaving only traces of a struggle that defied explanation. In one particularly troubling instance, a Zal'Kor platoon, sent to clear a small village nestled in the woods, returned with every single soldier missing. No signs of battle. No enemy resistance. Only a lingering, unsettling feeling that something had watched them from the shadows. The survivors who had escaped the attack spoke of an overwhelming presence, a dark, powerful force that had descended upon the village before the Zal'Kor had even arrived. It was not a force the Zal'Kor could comprehend, and it unnerved them. General Tharok's pride began to fray. He knew the Zal'Kor were unmatched in their destructive capabilities, but this was different. This wasn't just resistance. This was something else. The more he learned, the more he realized that humanity might not be as weak as he had assumed. He had believed their primitive ways would be no match for the precision and might of the Zal'Kor, but now, as reports of strange happenings spread, it became clear that something beyond the normal human struggle was at play. Something ancient, something powerful. The transmissions from Earth became more fragmented, but the legend of Baba Yaga grew ever louder. The ancient force that had protected humanity for centuries was no longer a myth. It was real, and it was beginning to stir. Tharok's unease was palpable. His confidence, once absolute, now began to crack. The Zal'Kor were not prepared for this kind of enemy. They had never encountered a force like Baba Yaga. And as the rumors spread, Theric couldn't help but wonder, had they made a grave mistake underestimating the humans? Was this truly the end of their reign, or had they awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated? The Zal'Kor had underestimated humanity. Now, they were beginning to realize the magnitude of their error. The legend of Baba Yaga was no longer a simple myth, it was a force that defied their understanding. General Theric, once so sure of his fleet's invincibility, now found himself shaken by reports he couldn't ignore. The humans, cornered and broken, had found something within themselves, a power they didn't know they had. The very earth seemed to respond to their distress, as if it had awoken from a long slumber. And at the heart of it was Baba Yaga, an ancient protector who had emerged from the depths of myth. In the wake of the Zal'Kor's devastating assault, the human survivors began to rally, not just around their remaining military leaders, but around the idea of something greater, a protector, a force of nature itself. They spoke of Baba Yaga as if she were real, and in their desperation, they clung to the hope that she could save them. The more the Zal'Kor pressed their attack, the more this mythical figure seemed to manifest in ways that defied all logic. Reports from human survivors began to filter in. They spoke of the forests becoming alive, of the ground itself shifting under the Zal'Kor's feet. It was as if nature itself was rebelling against the invaders. Trees seemed to bend and twist in unnatural ways, obstructing Zal'Kor movements. Terrain that had been flat and navigable for the fleet now seemed hostile, impassable. The ground cracked open in places, swallowing enemy soldiers whole. These were no ordinary phenomena, and no amount of Zal'Kor weaponry could explain them. The terrain itself, once the humans' weakness, was now their strongest ally. Baba Yaga had always been a figure of fear in human legend, but now she was becoming a symbol of resistance. The survivors, who had once cowered in fear, now felt emboldened. They claimed to see her, though no one could say exactly how or where. Some believed she had become one with the land, a living manifestation of the Earth's primal forces. Her powers seemed boundless, storms that churned from nothing, winds that tore through the enemy ranks, and fire that burned hotter than any human weapon. The Zal'Kor had brought their greatest weaponry, but none of it could stand against the ancient power that had been awakened. General Tharic's frustration grew. His tactical mind couldn't comprehend what was happening. The weapons he had designed to wipe out entire civilizations in minutes were being neutralized by an invisible force. His fleet had begun to lose its edge. The Zal'Kor were accustomed to total dominance, but this was different. Even the most elite strike teams began to falter, reports flooding in of inexplicable failures. One by one, they began to vanish, as though something in the woods was picking them off with surgical precision. As the human resistance grew bolder, more organized, Theric was forced to reconsider his approach. The Earth was proving to be more resilient than expected. There were no signs of surrender from the humans. Instead, they fought with a kind of ferocity that he had not anticipated. His fleet, once confident and poised to crush the last remnants of resistance, now found itself bogged down in drawn-out skirmishes with increasingly difficult targets. Humanity's true strength wasn't in their weapons, it was in their spirit, their ingenuity, and their ability to adapt. Theric had thought them weak, but now he saw that they were far from it. The force that had emerged from the depths of human folklore, Baba Yaga, was more than just a myth. She was a manifestation of humanity's will to survive, a force older than the stars themselves. As his ships continued to bombard the planet, they were met with unexpected interference. The energy fields protecting human settlements seemed to grow stronger, more resistant to Zal'Kor firepower. The terrain, once a battlefield, now seemed to fight against the invaders. The forests, the rivers, even the wind itself appeared to be responding to the human need for survival. Baba Yaga's influence was felt everywhere, even in the most remote corners of Earth. Theric issued orders for more aggressive tactics, but no matter how ruthless they became, no matter how many human cities they reduced to rubble, the strange occurrences continued. He began to question everything. The battle had become a war of attrition, and the Zal'Kor were losing. The enemy, once an afterthought, had now become a formidable force. Baba Yaga was not only real, she was unstoppable. As Theric grappled with his growing doubt, he realized the true depth of his mistake. The Zal'Kor had believed that humanity, with all its flaws and weaknesses, was an easy target. They had assumed that sheer force and advanced technology would be enough to erase the humans from existence. But they had failed to account for the will of the Earth itself. And at the heart of that will, now more powerful than ever, was Baba Yaga. The general sense of invincibility shattered. The human resistance was not merely fighting for survival, they were fighting with the land, with the power of an ancient protector. And Tharek realized, for the first time, that he might not be the one in control. The final confrontation between the Zal'Kor and the awakened force of Earth was inevitable. General Tharek, once confident in his superior technology and battle-hardened troops, now faced an enemy he could neither understand nor defeat. The power of Baba Yaga had become too overwhelming, too unpredictable for the Zal'Kor to counter. It wasn't just a battle for Earth anymore. It was a war for the very survival of his fleet and the very concept of invincibility that the Zal'Kor had always relied on. As the human resistance continued to rally under the mysterious figure of Baba Yaga, Tharek's frustration mounted. His fleet, once a formidable instrument of destruction, was now facing unforeseen obstacles at every turn. No longer were the humans crumbling beneath the weight of superior technology. Instead, they fought with the Earth itself as their ally. The more the Zal'Kor tried to stamp out the remaining pockets of resistance, the stronger and more coordinated the humans became. In the midst of this chaos, Tharek ordered a full-scale offensive, deploying his most elite warriors to hunt down the source of the growing resistance, Baba Yaga. He was determined to crush the heart of the rebellion, believing that by taking out this mythical force, the humans would once again fall to their knees. However, what he didn't anticipate was how deeply rooted Baba Yaga's influence had become in the land. His strike teams disappeared one by one. They were swallowed by the terrain, trapped by forces they could neither comprehend nor escape. Tharek's desperation grew as more of his warriors went missing. The once unstoppable Zal'Kor had become prey, hunted by an enemy they could neither see nor touch. The forces they had relied on, advanced weapons, ships, and technology, now seemed helpless against the sheer raw power of Baba Yaga. The Earth was alive with an ancient, untamable force that none of the Zal'Kor could challenge. It was not just the power of magic or nature, it was the deep-rooted strength of a species that refused to die. Tharek now understood that this was no longer about defeating a primitive race. It was about something far greater, something more primal and ancient than even the Zal'Kor could grasp. The humans had tapped into something old, something that had been buried beneath their planet for eons. And Baba Yaga was the vessel through which that power manifested. The very elements themselves bent to her will: wind, water, earth, and fire, all forces that the Zal'Kor's weapons were helpless against. The final assault came at the moment when the Zal'Kor were at their weakest. Baba Yaga, with the strength of the earth itself, unleashed her fury. The sky darkened as storms brewed, lightning crackling from the heavens as if the world itself was preparing to strike down the invaders. Tharek watched in disbelief as the ground beneath his fleet began to buckle and tear. His ships, once hovering with supreme authority, were now vulnerable, as the very land beneath them twisted and reshaped itself. It was as if the planet was rejecting the Zal'Kor, expelling them from its surface. Desperation led Tharek to make his final decision. He ordered the complete annihilation of Earth. If the Zal'Kor were to die, they would take the planet with them. But even as the command was given, Tharek realized it was too late. Baba Yaga had already countered, using the primal energy of the land to absorb the energy released from the weapons. A sudden shockwave rippled through the atmosphere, a force so powerful that it disabled the Zal'Kor fleet in a single pulse. Ships lost control, their systems shutting down as if the planet itself had rejected their presence. Tharek, his plans crumbling, watched in helplessness as his fleet plummeted from the sky. The Earth had fought back, and the invincible had been humbled. The very thing he had dismissed as a myth had become his undoing. The power of humanity, embodied in the form of Baba Yaga, had proven that it was not technology or weapons that determined the outcome of wars, but the strength of will and the resilience of spirit. With the fall of the Zal'Kor fleet, the remaining survivors of the invasion were scattered. Earth, battered but unbroken, stood victorious. General Tharek, once confident in his superiority, had learned the hard truth: humanity was not to be underestimated. What had begun as an easy conquest for the Zal'Kor had ended in complete disaster. They had been driven from Earth, their forces obliterated by a power they could not comprehend. As the humans, guided by the mysterious Baba Yaga, began to rebuild their world, the message was clear: Earth was no longer a vulnerable, fragile planet to be conquered. The myth of humanity's weakness had been shattered. And from the ashes of invasion, a new era had begun, one where the strength of humanity, empowered by forces far beyond what the Zal'Kor had imagined, would ensure that Earth would never again be seen as an easy target. The galaxy would learn to fear humanity, not as a weak species to be extinguished, but as a force of nature to be reckoned with.